So why are you running for U.S. Senate?
Well, right now our country's in a lot of trouble, primarily because of our national debt. It sits at $17 trillion. And we've also seen an erosion of our civil liberties at home. And so as someone who's a husband and a father, I'm kind of tired of just what we've seen with our career politicians in Washington. And I believe that I represent, I guess, the shared experience of a lot of people who've had to live under Tom Udall's leadership and the Obama administration. So right now I just believe we're out of time, and if we don't start solving our issues with debt, we're going to have a whole host of other problems.
So what's your big beef with Tom Udall?
Primarily just how he disregards the Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist, a strict constitutionalist, and I believe that we need to stick with the enumerated functions of the federal government. So,
such as?
Well, defense would be one thing. I mean, that's something that's clearly provided for the Congress to make laws for. So when we start getting into areas that should be left to the states, that's where I think we get into a lot of problems, especially financially. A lot of states have balanced budget amendments, which allows us to be more fiscally responsible. But right now we're seeing a Congress that believes that the federal government should have involvement in every aspect of our lives.
What's your pathway to victory? How do you make this thing happen?
Well, my pathway is to tell the truth, and at some point I'm not going to run a race that's just going to tell people what they want to hear. And I find hope when we start to talk about problems and reality and solutions. So I believe my candidacy offers a different glimpse of how to reach independence. Right now, Republicans only have 32% of the registered vote, which means that anyone
in New Mexico.
So if anyone's going to be competitive with Tom Udall, they need to reach independence. And so I've strived to form relationships with libertarians, civil libertarians, independents, and even some jaded Democrats who aren't happy with the Obama administration. So I think the message of liberty resonates with each of those groups, and that's a starting point. The other part of this is, like I said before, just to tell people the truth and let them make up their own minds. I don't want to win if I have to tell people what they want to hear, as opposed to the truth.
So are there some uncomfortable truths you're willing to talk about, such as?
Well, sure. I mean, you have a specific question? There's so many. Where do I start?
Well, like that maybe people can't get everything that they want. I mean, there's a cost that comes. There's no free lunch, as economists say. Yeah. That New Mexico is a state that is heavily reliant on federal dollars, and maybe those dollars aren't going to be there.
Well, we're facing that right now with the current government shutdown, and that reality is something that weighs on a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I know that have faced government furloughs and are losing their jobs. And so there is no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as a free program. It comes from the taxpayer. And so part of this education is letting people know that just because someone may promise you a stimulus bill, you have to ask the question, where's that money coming from? It's coming from us, the taxpayer. And we're paying for these programs with essentially a credit card. And it's dangerous. It's a bad financial policy. It's bad monetary policy.
What kind of Republican are you? Are you a Rockefeller Republican? Are you a Libertarian Republican like Rand Paul? Where are you in the spectrum?
Well, let the voters kind of assign a label. I would describe myself as a constitutional conservative, but I also believe that the Constitution is a libertarian document. If we actually support and uphold the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, you should see liberty. And so that's how I would describe myself.
So it's estimated it's going to cost between $7 or $11 million to run a U.S. Senate campaign in New Mexico. I would guess you don't have $7 or $11 million in the bank right now. How much do you have in the bank, and what do you think? What kind of money do you think you have to raise in order to make a credible run at this?
Well, in raising money, that's going to be a challenge for any candidate. I hope to raise as much as is needed to run a viable campaign. But one thing about the Liberty Movement is that they're passionate about grassroots. They're passionate about getting involved without having to pay for volunteers, because they're passionate about the message. And so if we can resonate with voters out there that aren't too happy with either party, you might see a level of support that you don't really have to account for the $7 million to run a race.
Now, Steve Pierce ran against Tom Udall 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. Had a pretty good amount of money and got thumped pretty good. What makes you think that you're going to be different?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be any different, but I'm going to try. I mean, the reason why I'm running this isn't just to win, in politics. I'm not going to Washington for a career in politics. I'm basically scared for my family, my friends, and so desperate times sometimes require desperate measures, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running for the Senate.
With a little bit more than a year to go, and I mean, maybe in a year from now, people will forget about this government shutdown thing that we're still mired in. But a lot of people in New Mexico has more Democrats than Republicans, are blaming Republicans for this. What would you say to a Democrat, a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, if you had a chance to talk to them, give them your elevator pitch, so to speak, and say, consider voting for me? What would you say to them?
Well, first we need to focus on what we have in common. I know a lot of Democrats are very upset about the violations that they're seeing of their privacy rights, which have happened under the Obama administration, which have also happened under Senator Udall's watch. We've seen he was one of 7 senators who sent a letter to the IRS directing the IRS to target conservative groups. This should be a concern for not just conservative groups, but also people that are, maybe considered liberal. Also, we have a lot of shared views on foreign policy. I think both Republicans and Democrats are sick of being in this perpetual war. And so those are 2 issues that I think there's a lot of crossover appeal. And someone who understands the Constitution, understands that the power to declare war resides with Congress, gives an opportunity to tie it to the people. And, we're paying for the wars, we're bleeding for the wars. It makes no sense to not have New Mexico involved in those decisions. And so those are issues that I think Democrats respond to because it's something that we all care about. And so I'll have to appeal to them on the issues that we do agree on. But also, I think Democrats understand that, when you look at who's owning and operating a business, they're seeing, excessive regulations just like Republicans are. They're seeing excessive taxes, and it's causing a lot of people who, may consider themselves a Democrat to close up shop. And so I don't want to appeal to people on a partisan basis or from a party standpoint. I think we just need to look at whether, our policies are viable. When we look at the economics.
Sounds like a lot of your issues kind of jibe with Gary Johnson. Are you a supporter of him, or you like him, even though he's not a Republican, he's a Libertarian?
I have a lot of respect for Gary Johnson, and I believe he did a great job as a governor here in the 90s. He's someone that has a lot of appeal to independents, and he still has a following amongst Republicans. A lot of people fondly remember his time in office. So I share a lot of his philosophies when it comes to the free market. I believe that we need to grow the private sector as opposed to the public sector. If we're going to look at raising revenue to fund government, we need to understand where that funding comes from or where that revenue comes from. It doesn't come from a printing press. It doesn't come from the Federal Reserve. So we need to look at how to produce productive jobs as opposed to just government jobs. And there's a big difference.
That's all the questions I've got. Is there anything that you want to say that I haven't brought up? Or?
Well, I would just encourage anyone to, if they want to find out more about myself, to visit clementsfornm.com. You should be able to see issues, my bio, to find out a little bit more about me. I am a new name on the scene, just appreciate you taking the time speaking with me today.
David Clements, nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.